Hello there again. We are in 2 Samuel. We're going to start in chapter 13. We'll get down as far as we can. These are a couple of fairly long chapters, but a lot of great lessons for us, especially in today's times. We are coming off the end of talking about David and Bathsheba, and God had promised that David was going to have some problems in his home, and we're going to be looking at that in this next portion of scriptures and kind of the consequences for David's actions. And some of these really could have been taken care of if David would have been paying closer attention. But it seems like David has got his eye off the ball, really, as far as his family goes and really his kingdom, too. You know, in the last part of the passage, which we didn't really cover very much in chapter 12, it talks about how that Joab was still going after Ammon, who they had started off going after because of how they treated David and they treated David's men way back there. What was it in chapter 10? And and so finally Joab had to send for David and say, "Hey, you need to come on down here, or this city is going to be called after my name." In other words, you're going to lose your kingdom to me because I'm going to be the one that everybody's going to say is winning the battles, which essentially is what happened to David with Saul. Okay, and so now we're coming on to chapter 13, and the focus is really going to turn to Absalom, and this is going to be through a series of a couple of stories here on what Absalom did and that sort of thing. But we're going to start it with a story about Amnon and Tamar. All right, and this is one of those stories that I know when you're preaching and teaching through the Bible, you probably wish that you could skip over. You know, there's several stories like that in the scriptures, but I'm thankful that God puts this in here because these people went through real life problems, real tragedies in their life. There's real family problems. Like I say, we see these kind of things creep up in homes today. And there's some things that we can do, some preventative measures that we can put into place so that we don't see this kind of thing in our homes. And really, it boils down to a couple of different things. You know, we're going to see the dysfunction. I mean, all families are sinful families. There's not one family out there that's perfect. We may look online and we may see these beautiful pictures of homes and stuff like that, but it's kind of like we used to say whenever we took the girls' pictures that we have to take 100 to get one good one to put on Facebook or to show to family or what have you, because I mean, in all reality, it's hard to get kids to sit still, isn't it? It's hard for us to get our kids to sit still. Anyway, I don't know how it is in your family, but that's one of the things that you always are working towards, and you want everybody to look at your family and say they are the perfect family, you know, and they are good and all this kind of stuff. And you know, even being a pastor, you want your family to look good in front of your church. And my family sits up front of the church, and my girls get out of hand. Sometimes I have to call them down, and from the pulpit, they probably get called down from the pulpit more than anyone else does. And it's probably not because they need it more, but I guess I notice it more, you know. But anyway, be that as it may, we have what I'm saying is that we have problems, you know, and there's always going to be that. But the thing is how do we prevent it? We want them to do better, and you know, this is no ways trying to say that that's okay. I am going to correct it. I'm not going to just go into denial that things are perfect or things are great when they're not. We do need to work on our discipline, you know, that's kind of the other side of it is whenever you stop denying that you have a problem, then you can start working on the discipline. And that's also something that's missing in our home. So we have dysfunction, which all families have. We have a discipline problem. And sometimes that discipline problem arrives from having a denial problem. 3 Ds there. I don't usually do that, do I? But I think I read it somewhere else. So that's what happens. But anyway, that does kind of characterize it, though, doesn't it? And as we go down through here, that's what we're going to see. We'll see those three things as we go through here. Is that David's family had problems, and the problems, a lot of the problems, was a denial problem on David's behalf because he was the father. He should have, even though that these kids were grown, there's some things that David could have stepped in and said, "Hey, we're not going to do that. That's not right." And so we need to, and we also need to be protective of our children as well, even from one child to the other. We need to protect them, and we have homes now that are split. Sometimes we have stepchildren or half brothers or sisters that are in our homes, and we may be bringing them in from another marriage or something like that, and that can cause trouble one from the other. Whether it's our kids or their kids, it doesn't really matter. When you bring them into your home, you become one, and you need to work at becoming one. But that also means that you need to protect them from each other and not let it just run amok or any way that they want to do it. There needs to be some order whenever it comes to our home lives. And so this is a very important lesson here. And I hope that you'll take it as that. I'm not, and again, what I want to see today, and if these things have already taken place in your home, some of these things, there's some other things that can take place, and maybe some forgiveness and some things that we can do. And I'll try to point some of that stuff out as we go as well. But the main thing I want us to focus on is the preventative measures that we need to take in our homes to make sure that they don't get this far out of tilt. Okay. So let's start here in verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David," so we say Absalom is really the center character here. Okay. Even though that, again, Amnon and Tamar are going to take center stage here for a second, this is really about Absalom and over the next few chapters, and the dysfunction in David's home. All right, so Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister. Now we're going to find out later on that Absalom was also a very nice-looking fella. Okay, and it's going to be mentioned down the line, I think in the next week's lesson. But anyway, and his sister was also fair, so she was a beauty to look on. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Now, Amnon was, according to 2 Samuel chapter 3, was David's oldest son. Okay, so in all reality, he was in line for the kingdom as far as what most people think. We know that Solomon would inherit that throne, but really Amnon was the oldest, and so he would have most likely been thought of to be the next successor to King David. But it says that they had this love. It says that the son of David loved her. And when it says loved her, we're going to find out that that's not really the love that he had. He had a lust for her. And we need to really be careful with that word, don't we? And because a lot of people have fallen in love with looks, and that is not the correct way to do things. We need to love the person. Looks change. There's been many marriages that have ended because that one or the other stopped looking like they did whenever they were younger. That happens to all of us, everybody except for me. I get better looking as the time goes on, but I know everyone else seems like that they're, and I Kate too, she gets better looking in case she's watching this. But everybody else, kind of slides a little bit as they get older. Not you either. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about, who I'm talking about, right? Okay. So I get myself into trouble. You turn this off, right? Anyway, I got to have a little fun here with this stuff too, because this is very serious. I find that a little humor kind of breaks it up a little bit. Okay. Anyway, so he fell in lust with her, as probably would be better worded here. Verse 2 says, "And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar. and she was a virgin. And Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother. So he had a cousin, okay? And this cousin comes into the picture here in a couple of different ways. And we'll see Jonadab, but let's see what kind of fella he was, first of all. So this was David's nephew. This is one of his brother's sons, and he's also a friend to Amnon. Jonadab was a very subtle man, so he was very tricky and sly in the way that he did things. And it says, and he said unto him, Why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? Wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. And Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father comes to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come, and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it, and eat it at her hand. So Amnon lay down and made himself sick. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come, and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat it at her hand. And David sent home to Tamar, saying, Go now to thy brother Amnon's house, and dress him meat. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he lay down and took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake cakes. And she took a pan and poured out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, Have out all men from me. And they went out, every man from him. Okay, I wanted to read it down to this far. You probably already know about what's going to take place here. But I want you to notice something here on David's part that would have required a little bit of discernment. Okay, he should have been able to see through this. David should have, and should have been protective of Tamar. We as men need to be protective of our daughters, okay, and see through some of these things. I look at some of the posts and things of these girls online, and if you don't watch what your daughters put on there, you need to, and you need to be aware of those things and aware of the men that they're hanging out with as well, and maybe put a kibosh to some of this stuff. David here should have seen through this. Now, what I wanted to read this down to you for is because Ammon already had servants. He had servants taking care of him. Why would he need Tamar to come down and take care of him? Wouldn't that be a question that you would ask? Why do you need this? Why are you wanting her to come down here? And again, they were not full-blood sister brothers here as well. And so there should have been some questions here and some protections for Tamar, even against her own brother. Now, look, again, we all know that we don't have perfect families, and we do need to be protective of them. We live in a day and time where there's a lot of things that are seen and heard and done that we may not have ever thought of whenever we were kids. But I want to tell you something. This stuff's been going on for a very long time. This was written thousands of years ago, before the internet even came into being. Okay? We need to watch and be overprotective. Can I say that? We need to be overprotective of our kids. I know in years past, there's been a lot of things that said, you don't need to shelter your kids. Baloney. God put them in our care for that purpose, to shelter them. Okay? And if you don't think that I will shelter my girls, then you've got another thing coming. I'm going to do everything that I can to protect them, and especially whenever they come of age, for men to come into their lives and all this kind of stuff. I've already had discussions with them that I'm going to be the chief picker outer. And you say, well, they won't ever find a man. That may be true, but they also, maybe I can help them, steer them in the right direction. They're not going to just be out there on the sea all by themselves, and picking their mate's not going to be the first major decision that they make in their life. Okay. We need to take that back as Christians and as fathers and mothers to help them. Don't just send them out there on dates and all that kind of stuff where you don't know what's going on. That is not the way it's supposed to be. Virgin girls, and this mentions that she was a virgin here, virgin girls need to be under the protection of their father until they get married. Okay, no matter whatever age that is. I know it's not the custom, but look at what's happening. Look at what's happening. I mean, I think about all this stuff with the trafficking of women and children and all this kind of stuff. A lot of this could be done away with if fathers would step up to the plate and be more protective of their girls. We need to be a part of their lives. We need to help them make those decisions. Even our boys do too. Amnon was David's son, and he shouldn't have been in denial. Sometimes we overlook what the possibilities could be because it's in our own family, but we don't need to do that. We don't need to hide our heads in the sand and wait for something bad to happen before we say, boy, I wish. What we're talking about today is preventative measures that we can take. Don't be in denial whenever it comes to this. Use some discernment, okay, whenever it comes to this as well. Pray to the Lord that God would give you wisdom to be able to see through the cunningness, because they have friends like Jonadab that are going to say, hey, why don't you just do it this way? And they're on the sly, all right? And this is not new. That's what I want you to understand. This isn't just new these are lessons that have been around for a very long time. All right. So the question from David, if I was David to my son Amnon, is you've got servants that'll take care of you. You don't need Tamar to come down here to take care of you. Okay. And that's going to put her in a bad situation, and you too. And I don't want to do that. Say, well, that'd be overprotective. How could he have ever even known? Because he's a man, right? Okay. So, but that's where we are. All right. This is Amnon said unto Tamar, bring me meat unto the chamber. So he's asking her to come into his chamber, to his room. What else could we learn from that? As if you go to Tyler Road, you know that we always try to do things on the up and up. I always tell them, if you see that I'm the last one there and a woman's talking to me, some reason Kate's not there, to be sure and stay there. Don't leave me with a woman there at the church talking to her. It might not be anything bad going on or anything, but it definitely is a protective measure for her and for me. And because we're people, and we certainly don't even want to have a bad witness as a church, do we? And so this should go on in our homes too. This is the way that it is that we need to be thinking along those lines as well, to make sure that we don't put them in any kind of dangerous situation. We don't want to bring shame to the mother or anything like that. That's what the proverb says, is that a child left to himself will bring his mother to shame. And so this is something that the Bible points out. All right. And so we need to heed these concerns too. We need to be discerning about these things. Amnon said unto Tamar, bring the meat to my chamber, that I may eat of thine hand. Certainly, again, girls don't need to be left alone with boys for any length of time. It can't come to. It might be okay, but on the other hand, it might not. All right. And so again, you say, well, this just doesn't work out in our society today. I guess we need to change our society. What are we going to just stand back and let these kind of things take place and say, well, you know what? It's just the world that we live in. I don't know. Am I being over cautious? Is my girl's going to be in trouble You're welcome to email me and let me know what you think about it. pastortier@gmail.com. And we'll conversate on it. But again, why does God put this stuff in here? Why are we supposed to study this stuff? I don't know. I thought it was to get some lessons out of it. And when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her and said unto her, Come lie with me, my sister. And she answered him, Nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? So if you do this, it's going to be a shame on me. I will no longer carry the status that I carry right now, and this is going to be a shame for me if you do this. Where am I supposed to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. She says, go to the king, and maybe he'll let you marry me. But he had no intentions of marrying her. He had no intentions of it. And look, this is the way that it is a lot. And not just our society, but in previous societies as well, is that he had no intentions. All he had is lust on his mind. He didn't have love on his mind. He didn't have wedding bells dinging in his head. All he had was lust. All right, he had one thing on his mind, and that's Tamar understood this, and it says, howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her to lay with her, and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love or lust wherewith he had lusted after her. And Amnon said unto her, Arise, be gone. Boy, I mean, the big loser here really is Tamar, isn't it? She had been taken advantage of, and she lost her honor here, her dignity here, and Amnon here hated her because of what he did. This didn't cause, some people think, well, if you do all the kissing and everything, it'll make them love you more. It really won't. All that stuff is physical. What you need to do is set out, if you're looking for a spouse, a mate, is to be friends with them. Learn how to be friends with them without the physical contact. And if you can do that, that will keep you a lot longer than the other stuff will. Okay. And I don't remember ever really being taught that a lot, but that is the truth of it. Anybody that has done that knows that. I remember, Kate and I have talked about this many times. One of the things that we have the fondest memories of is that our first kiss was on our wedding day, and it was a very special time. And I remember seeing that and hearing other people talk about that, but I don't really ever remember being taught that how special that it is. But it can be a very special time for you, and so it's something that we do need to teach, isn't it? It's something that we need to show is that with our spouses, especially, be an example that we're friends. I mean, Kate's my best friend. Hopefully, I'm hers, and you have to work on that relationship more than anything else. So, where are we here now? So Amnon kicks her out. Verse 16, and she said unto him, There is no cause. This evil is sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. But he would not hearken to her. He wouldn't listen to her. Then he called his servant that ministered unto him and said, Put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. And she had a garment of diverse colors upon her, almost like Joseph's coat of many colors. So she had a garment of many colors, that forthwith the robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparelled. And his servant brought her out and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head, rent her garment of diverse colors that was on her, and laid her hand in her head, and went on crying. And Absalom, her brother, here comes Absalom again, said unto her, Hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. All right. So now this is another tough thing. Sometimes we try to cover things up because they're in our family. He's your brother. You don't want this thing to get out, and so we don't do anything. The one that has been taken advantage of is left there to really sit and rot because that it's family business. But the fact is that there needs to be some restitution here. There needs to be something that happened. She should have been able to. Why wasn't she able to go to David herself and explain the situation? Why didn't David see her crying like this and weeping? Why didn't he notice that she didn't have her coat on anymore, and that it was that she had torn it, and that she put ashes on her head, and that she was weeping? Why didn't her dad notice this? And this is very important. If you're a dad, you need to be a part of your children's lives, all of them. Amnon too. He needed some scolding, didn't he? He needed somebody to come in and say that was not the right thing to do, and he needed to make restitution for it. Amnon did, whatever that may be. Whether it's David running him out like we're going to see him doing to Absalom here for killing Amnon. Amnon should have been already out the door. But there was no recourse for this boy for what he did because he didn't have a communication with his daughter. He should have known what was going on. He should have been a part of her life. He should have been protective of her. Instead, we don't see that in David. Okay? But we can see it in ourselves. We can take those steps. And that's what I'm saying to you. In a preventative way, we need to step in. We need to we need to be watchful. We need to be listening. We need to make sure that we have discipline in our homes whenever things don't go the way that they're supposed to. We don't need to be covering it up. We don't need to be paying the bill behind our kids' back because of the damages that they've done. We need to let them, whenever they make royal mistakes, that there needs to be a royal discipline to go with it. And that's what should have happened here with David and his family and with Amnon. All right. So again, learn these lessons. And now what we see is Absalom telling his sister, maybe giving her the worst thing of all, is just to keep this under your hat. Don't worry about it. Seriously? I mean, that's not good advice. Okay, don't worry about it. It'll all come out in the wash. No, she should have been able to go to David and go to the Lord. There needed to be some forgiveness. There needed to be some talking these things out. What to do next? What's the next steps? All of these kind of things. But there wasn't any of those things done. Listen to what it says here, verse 21. But when King David heard of all these things, so he did hear of it. He wasn't a part of it, and he didn't go checking it out himself, but somebody told him that this is what was going on. He was very wroth. He was very mad. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad. For Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. David didn't do anything. He didn't say, Amnon, you're out of here. He didn't throw him out of the kingdom. You need to apologize to your sister. See, this is what I'm talking about. There's some denial going on here. He didn't have discernment or discretion to say, don't go take care of your brother. Your brother is big enough. He's a big boy. He can take care of himself. He doesn't need you going over there and making him cakes and eating out of his, letting him eat out of your hands. That just doesn't even sound right. Not in any age. All right. And so that doesn't, again, use some discernment, look into the situation. And then whenever situations do arise, we need to be a part of those. Find a solution. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. It won't be easy. No matter what direction that this goes in now, this is not going to be easy on the parents. This is not going to be easy on the kids. This is not going to ever be easy on Tamar. She's going to be living with this for the rest of her life. And here Absalom also has a grudge in his heart towards his brother, because there was no restitution. There wasn't anything done that we can see to Amnon because of this bad behavior. And it came to pass after 2 full years. The Bible's good about that. 2 full years have passed, that nothing's gone on. The Absalom, he's got a plan here. Absalom had sheep shears in Belhazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. Absalom came to the king and said, Behold, now thy servant hath sheep shears. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants go with thy servant. And the king said to Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all go now, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him. Howbeit, he would not go, but blessed him. And said, then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with thee? Absalom pressed him. Then he let Amnon go, and all the king's sons go with him. All right, so this is another blunder here on King David's behalf. I hate to, run David into the mill here, but David's the father, he's the king, and he does have discernment, right? Because he does see through this. If he didn't, then he would have just went with Absalom. He would have sent Amnon up there with him without any thought to it. But he says, why are you wanting this? Why are you wanting all of us to go up there? And then why do you want Amnon to go up there? Why are you doing this? And so David had an idea that this wasn't all above board. And he had to have known that there was a hatred between Absalom and Amnon, because they weren't talking. There wasn't a word said between the two boys. For 2 full years, this has been going on. And David hasn't stepped in. David hasn't said anything. He hasn't said, you guys, we need to sit down here and talk about this and figure this out. You see what I'm saying? You say, well, when is it the boy's responsibility? Well, it is the boy's responsibility, but again, it's everybody's responsibility. And if David was doing everything that he could to rectify the situation, and then this still went down, and he used a little discretion, and he says, Amnon is not going up there under any circumstances. I do not see anything good coming from this, right? He could have done that at least, and he would have been a protector. Again, I see that he's not protecting his kids at all, even at any age. And he could have stepped in as the king and said, this is not going to happen this way. Anybody with any kind of foreknowledge, even if you've never read this story, you pretty much know what's coming up regardless, right? Okay, and so David was living this, and so he should have known as well. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, verse 28, saying, Mark ye now when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not, for I have not I commanded you. Be courageous and be valiant. So he's telling them to do what he's not willing to do. He wasn't being courageous and valiant. He's having somebody else take care of his dirty work. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gave him up upon his mule and fled. And it came to pass, while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. Then the king arose and tare his garments, lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. And Jonadab the son of Shemaiah, here he comes again, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men of the king's sons, but only Amnon is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. And it was Jonadab was a big tattletale too, right? He liked to spread gossip and spread rumors. And so now he's coming to David and he's like, don't be too sore. This is, it's not all your children are dead. just Amnon's dead. And this was because Absalom's been planning this ever since that he did what he did to Tamar. All right. And so now, therefore, let not my lord the king take the thing to heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. But Absalom fled, and the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, behold, the king's sons come, as thy servant said, so it is. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came, lifted up their voice and wept, and the king also and all his servants wept very sore. But Absalom fled and went to Tamiah, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur, which is where he was from, and David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur, and was there 3 years. And the soul of the king longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. So we have here King David was weeping for all of his kids when he thought all of them was dead. He did weep for Amnon for a short period of time, but his heart was really yearning for Absalom, who had fled from King David to get out of his sight because he had killed Amnon. But we see that King David's heart yearned for his son to come back, Absalom to come back. And this whole next chapter is going to be talking about how that Joab wanted to get Absalom back into Jerusalem because David was not himself anymore. He wasn't carrying on the work of a king because of what had happened here. And instead of allowing Absalom to go through the discipline of being banished as a son and not calling him back, he lets his heart speak to him instead of his head, instead of the Lord. And they go into the Lord and asking God what he should do about this. And that is a big part of what's missing here too, isn't it? Is that none of this is being prayed about. None of this is being talked to God about as far as what needs to be done and what David can do. And he's not calling Nathan to ask him what he should do. And whenever we get into sin and our families get into tailspin, the last person we want to talk to is the preacher. And this happens many times until everything is too late for anything to be rectified. We wait till the last minute when everything is just in tatters and we're ready to walk out the door on our husbands or our wives or our kids or a mess or whatever. And then we say, you know what, maybe we should talk to the Lord about this. Well, guess what, my brothers and sisters? You should have been talking to the Lord the whole time and asking him what you should do on each one of these things and getting some godly counsel. Maybe if it's not the preacher, maybe it's somebody else that has a family, that's raised a family and said, look, this is what I've got going on in my life. And you think, well, I can't tell them that because then it's going to reflect badly on my family. It's going to get worse if you don't. You understand that, right? As we've looked at this, things don't just automatically come back together and everything falls together and one happy family by the end of this story. That's not the way that it is at all. As a matter of fact, what we see is it's gradually being torn to shreds because that there's denial that's going on. There's no discernment that's happening. There's no discipline that's happening. And again, this goes back to the very start, is that we all have dysfunctional families to some extent or another. And so it's good for us to have these conversations, to think about these things, and to know that we need God. We need him to intervene on this. And at some point during these years that are going by, this isn't just happening. We're doing this. This is 39 minutes in. We've covered years of time that's gone by here, right? Absalom fled down there for 3 years. So we had 2 years that he was mad at Amnon. We have another 3 years. We've got 5 years that have rolled by here in just this one chapter. Years roll by when we don't do what needs to be done, and it doesn't get better until we're ready to first admit. This is like Salvation 101, isn't it? First admit that we are sinners and that we do have problems and we do have struggles. You're not going to be reading Proverbs if you don't think you need it. If you think that your family's all that, you don't need that stuff, right? Why would you read the Bible if you don't really need it? I mean, it's whenever we realize that we have problems that we start looking for help. David here probably thought, I've got this. I'm the king. Certainly I can control my own family. Well, he didn't do that. He allowed it to get out of line, and one little deal here, one little deal there, and then before you know it, the whole wall falls down because that you're not willing to make any kind of difference. Okay, so we got to realize first of all that we do have problems, and that there are going to be problems arise, and that there are no perfect families, and there's no perfect situations. Everything's going to be different. You may not have this problem; it may arise in something else. But we need to pray. We need to. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is stay in prayer and stay in God's word, that God would give us the discernment to see into certain situations, that so that we'll know before they arise, the problems arise, that there could be a problem. This is called prudence. All right. It's also in the Proverbs too. It talks about prudence, having prudence, being able to foresee a problem. It's not that you're psychic. It's just that you think down the road, 2 or 3 steps, a mile down the road, if we go down this path, where is it going to lead to? What could it potentially lead to? And then say, hey, maybe that's the wrong road to go down. Pull back and say, let's start again. Let's find a different path to go down, because that one is full of pitfalls and traps, right? We need discernment. We need, that only comes from the Lord. That wisdom only comes from the Lord. That prudence comes from God. And so we need to fear God, and we need to say, Lord, help me. I need your help. I need to get through this situation. This should start at day number minus 9 months. And truth be told, and I can tell you this, I don't spend nearly enough time, and this has really caught my my thoughts on this, is because God he's given us the girls that we have for a short period of time. It goes by so quick. He wants us to be good stewards with those girls. Every day that we have with them, to spend with them, we have an obligation to God first, that we raise them the way that he wants us to do it, that we influence them in that way, that everything that we show them, everything that we teach them, everything that we put into their minds in some way points them towards their heavenly Father, who they're going to need whenever they have families, right? That's being a good steward. Man, they could be penniless. They could be poverty stricken. But man, if they serve the Lord, that is our number one goal. If I see them taking the things that we've taught them and running with them and seeing souls saved and lives changed as a response to their life, man, you're going to see one happy man. They come before the church. They come before all of those things. They have to be, because God's put them in our care, our charge, to make sure that this work gets done. And that's my number one thing. Number one priority is them. Because the Lord is really the number one priority. I should put that in there. But there he is. So it goes right along suit with it, right? Pray, seek God for discernment. Okay, realize that problems and things come. Then we also need to put discipline in our homes. And this doesn't just mean spankings, and that's part of it, but that's not all of it. discipline comes from, they need to first see disciplined parents, that we do things the same way every time. That, you know, for instance, when Sunday rolls around, we're in church. So that is a discipline, and we train them in that. When they sit down at breakfast time, that the Bible gets opened up and we read it and we pray to the Lord each and every day. Whenever before they go to bed, then we get the Bible out again and we do that. Those are disciplines that we teach them. That should be just common, everyday occurrences. That's what's going to take place, and that we do things a certain way. That there's the way that we speak, the way that we talk, the things that we listen to, the things that we watch, all are along the same. They don't get out of kilter one with the other. Everything harmonizes with the one thing, which is doing the will of God. That's our whole focus, whole point. We do schooling so that they'll know how to serve God better. You know, everything that we teach them is so that they'll be able to serve God better, serve their families better, all of those kind of things. And so everything needs to harmonize, and that's what true discipline is. And so these things, and then whenever we and be protective of them, we need to be protective of them. It doesn't mean that they don't need to make choices. They will make choices no matter how protective that you are of them, and they need responsibilities. I'm not saying that, but they also need someone that has their hand right on their shoulder as they're doing these things, as they're making these decisions, and pointing out different roads. If you take this road, this is what's going to take place. If you take this road, this is what's going to take place. Which one should we go down, right? And go down with, you're going down there with them. You're going to be with them. And if something bad happens, you're going to be with them. And if it doesn't matter if it's their brother or sister or the principal at school or the teachers at school or Sunday school or the preacher or whoever that it is, that you got their back, that you're there with them. You're going to go through this with them. You're going to, if something bad happens, you don't tell them just to be quiet about it. You come tell me, let's talk about this. There's a lot of things that we can do. I mean, there's tons here. I could spend all day. I'm kind of going on and on about this, but boy, I feel like that this is a big thing. It's definitely a big thing to me, and I'm trying to learn this. I'm not perfect at this in any stretch, but boy, whenever I read this stuff, it makes me want to double down on this stuff. And talking to people, you know, I see more and more kids not going to church. It's a big thing in my mind is as I don't want to raise my girls and then at the end of the day that they're not serving God. I just don't want it. And I ask parents, even parents that their kids aren't going to church, anything I can do to make a difference, because I want to make a difference in their life. I don't want them to go by the wayside. Do you? And I think that's probably why if you're still watching this, that's probably why you're doing it. So we're on the same track here. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep studying God's word, looking at these lessons that God puts in here. All right. Chapter 14, I'll go over a little bit of that next time whenever we start. We're going to be in chapter 15 and 16, I think, next week, which is talking about Absalom. So we'll hit 14 and get into 15 and 16. All right. Thanks for listening. I hope that this is beneficial to you, and I'm praying for you. And I know that other people are too, that you have in your life. But we'll try to make it through this thing together by staying close to God and in His Word. Okay. All right. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for this opportunity that we have to study your Word. And Father, I pray that you would help us as we raise our kids, that we would have the discernment, because that we do have dysfunctional families. We do have sinful families. And when we're sinners and we fell many times, but help us to take these lessons to heart and to do what's in them. And Lord, that maybe we won't have to go through some of the things that David did here with his kids. I'd hate to lose one of them because that I didn't listen to what your word said. We love you and thank you for all of these warnings and for all these great stories that you give to us. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. I'll see you next time.